Hello and welcome to the Financial Secrets Revealed podcast, season 2, where we are lifting the lid on financial abuse. I am Amanda Cassar and today I have laryngitis, so I am a little croakier than normal, but I'm glad to have most of my voice back after losing it for the week. I am joined by the beautiful Darlene Morant, all the way from the most beautiful country, Belize. Oh, I had the opportunity to go cave tubing there one time. It was just magical. Welcome, Darlene.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, you're Belize via Florida and back to Belize again, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. I spent some time in New York too, when I first left Belize, but the winters there were too brutal. So I ended up in Florida, which
Yeah,
was
not
one
terribly
flight away
tropical
from
in,
Belize. Yeah,
not too tropical in New York City, is it?
no, not.
I think I left New York one year. It was about the 10th of December, and I got out the morning this blizzard was coming in, and we would have been locked there for days. So I got
Yeah.
out in the nick of time. So yeah, I'm a subtropical girl too, so I'm not used to the snow or anything. Now, tell us a little bit about your background. I understand you used to be a newborn coach, but now you're coaching women. So tell us about that little journey of yours there.
Well, I started off in accounting and finance. That was my background in school, and I worked for an accounting firm a while back. And then after I did that, I started having children and got married. So then I ventured into the newborn care space after I left being home with my babies. And that took me about a 10-year journey there. I love newborns. That's my sweet spot. I teach them how to eat and to feed and to sleep great. So I loved that. And at the same time, I was coaching mothers as well. First time parents didn't know what they were doing, or some parents who thought they knew what they were doing, but found out that, babies don't sleep all night unless, they're trained to do so. So those kinds of things, I love being in that space. But I felt the tug to do more and to do things a little differently, because doing that meant I would be in home most of the time with the families versus doing something that keeps me at an entrepreneur position and helping from the outside. So now I'm a life empowerment coach, and I just help women learn how to get to that haters be damned spot in their life. And that's been coming through my own journey.
So, haters be damned. That is a pretty cool and pretty strong title. I absolutely love it. And I do know damn is a swear word in the US where it's really not here. But how did you come up with this haters be damned? And tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, coaches need coaches. And in one of my group coaching sessions, we were talking about certain things that women go through and how we're told what we should do, what we could do, what we would have done, instead of just being able to listen to our own voice. And that's when one day we were like, well, haters be damned, because I'm doing it this way anyway. And then I'll figure out my own path. And so it kind of stuck,
Yep.
and I created the group program for my clients to be able to teach them how to get to that place, to teach them how
So
to
if we
become
want
their
to find out
advocate.
more, sorry, if we want to find out more about haters be damned, where do you look that up? Is it Facebook mostly or?
Well, I have a website, hatersbedamned.com. There's a website there where people can schedule to just have a conversation with me, or to see what, that program is about and who I am. So we can go there to hatersbedamned.com. And I'm also on Facebook at Darlene Morant. I'm in a couple places. I try to use my name so that it comes with my face.
Yep.
But yeah.
Perfect. What a beautiful face. Now,
Thank
you haven't always had it easy. So, for someone who had a background in accounting and finance, you've actually been through two bankruptcies. So, can you tell us a little bit about your story? And I believe we'd probably call it self financial abuse and what you did to yourself
Yeah.
financially over the years. We often think of financial abuse as something that's done to us by somebody else, but we can
Mm-hmm.
also be pretty harsh on ourselves. So, can you share your story, darling?
Sure. Well, I'm generally hard on myself as it is. So
Oh, we're
that's
women.
an aside. And having done that, my parents didn't teach me much about money. They taught me what they knew, right? And they would always say, save your money. You're gonna need it later. When you work, you got to put some money aside, things like that. But once I got through, sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to stop that sound, if you can hear that. Once I got through that with my life with them and I took over my own finances, I just carried on doing whatever the heck I wanted. I took out student loans for school. I did um, when I got my money, I would spend all of it and not save enough. I would, when I left one job and went to the other job, I would take my 401k, all of it, just the things that were more young doing than age doing. I wasn't learning from my mistakes. And then once I got to the States and got married, well, that came with its own financial challenges. We were never really set or never had the conversations that I guess would have garnered us to say, here's what we know we will not get into. Here's the things that we can do together. And so I ended up in my first bankruptcy, and that was a joint bankruptcy at the time. But then after that got cleared, I started to get another credit card again, started to get, obviously didn't learn from that mistake. Because, after you come out of a bankruptcy, they flood you with all the things that now you can get again that you didn't have. But that's not the way to do it. So go ahead.
No, I was just thinking what you've just sort of triggered when you're talking about you've gone into this partnership and you never had the conversations. And to a degree, that's pretty normal, isn't it? So you've totally skipped over what are our goals and also how we're going to manage our finances. You've ended up with four beautiful babies in the meantime, no
Yeah.
clear financial plan or goals about anything. So your story, people sit back and go, oh, that's a bit silly. But how many of us actually do that? How many of us sit down and go, right, let's interview each other for how we're going to do this for
Right.
the rest of our lives? Do we want two children, four children, no children? And how do we manage our finances? Who's going to be the breadwinner? Does someone stay home to be the caregiver? And all of a sudden you end up as a double bankrupt in your marriage.
Yeah.
Was it just a joint spending thing? You just didn't take any notice of what you were doing? How did that joint bankruptcy come about?
No, we didn't know what we were doing, but we were doing it, right? You're spending a money, you need a vehicle, you start having kids, you need a vehicle, so you get one. And your credit's not really that shot yet, so you're allowed to get a vehicle. And then, you have to have groceries and everybody needs clothes and it's time for school and all the things just kind of pile on. At one point, my ex was working three jobs to do what it is that would bring in money. And I was working from home doing call assistant services now because then I could be with the children. But then after that first bankruptcy got through, that all kind of stopped. He ended up deciding that we wanted to do another business that would keep him in commission base, but not necessarily quite doing enough to get through commission based to pay mortgage and do car notes and do all the things. So then you fall back into the same old patterns, and it didn't serve us at all. So the second time around, I decided that I needed a financial coach for myself, just from having one conversation with a friend that recommended a friend and said, okay, you're supposedly in the finance industry, but you're definitely not doing it. What do you do with your money? First, start by tracking your spending. And it turns out it was just like little things that just drain you. I was buying too much yarn because I love to knit and crochet. Going to the nail salon, which I love to have my nails done, but we don't have money for nails. You just need groceries. So after figuring that all out, starting to go through a plan and follow a plan and learn to get really good at, okay, these get paid first, these get paid second, here is your spending money. And then after you get really good at that, you could get more in this line item that is your spending money. And so it became a discipline thing. And discipline is part of some of the things that I lacked a lot in my finances when I was growing up and after I took over my own money. I just wasn't great with it at all. I wasn't a good steward. And
Yep.
some of my financial coaching also taught me how to be a better steward of the money that I have and the money that I get and who I get to serve with the money that I come across. So yeah, this is a lot.
Yeah. So a lot of the things you're talking about are basically financial services 101. Sit down and do your budget. What has to be paid first? So the people who are now doing the eye rolling, going, oh, this is also basic. For you, it took you two bankruptcies to come back and go, I have to be disciplined. I love that you use that word. So a lot of us sort of, discipline has this heavy authoritarian spanking kind
Yeah,
of
it is
a
not.
thing in our head. So was it for you that the discipline that was going to reap the rewards, or you'd been through these two horrific self-abusive bankruptcies, or was it, you know what, if I'm on top of this, the reward is greater for me because I've been disciplined? What in the end was sort of the snap that you went, this has got to change?
That by the time I got to the second bankruptcy, my relationship was a little bit rocky then too. And so by the time I finished that bankruptcy, my ex-husband was saying, I want out of our marriage. I think so things were starting to go downhill in several areas, right? So at that point, I really had to take stock. You sit down and you say, okay, you're either gonna fall to the ground because that's what's happening. You're going to go into a third bankruptcy because you're going to be foreclosed on. Your house is going to be taken away. What's going to happen now? Is this what you want for your children to see? When you did it first, they were babies, but now they can understand that things are shifting in a certain way. Is this what you want? Is this the kind of legacy you want to leave? So I had to ask myself those hard questions and then make the choices. Having a financial coach wasn't free, right? I had to pay for it. But in order to pay for it, then I had to figure out how my budget was going to work because this was going to change my life. This was going to change my children's lives. And from doing those little disciplinary things, I now no longer have debt. I don't I don't have a job at the moment because I have my business, which is the coaching business that I'm building. However, even though that has not turned into the income that I want for my children to see as a legacy, I don't have the baggage of the debt that I had before because of the discipline that I created in order to get out from under. It was,
That
yeah,
must feel pretty cool
it's
as
pretty
well, though.
gory. It feels so good. Yes, it does.
For an
Feels
empowerment coach to be empowered, I think that's pretty important.
yes, yes,
So your
I agree.
parents obviously taught you some basic lessons around money for you to go into finance, which you totally ignored, as most of our children do. Are there tips now that you've been through the ringer, not looked out for yourself? What do you want them to learn about money and from your experiences?
I want them to learn that it's a tool. I want them to learn that it's a tool in your toolbox. It's not the tool. Because along with the things that you learn from, or share with your brothers and sisters, or give to the people that are less fortunate than you, those things help you in your money decisions as you're growing up. And if they see better habits from me, watch your habits. That's what I want them to learn. Watch your discipline. And discipline, like you said before, can be like a harsh word, but it doesn't need to be when we're talking about our money, because now it's like if I get $1 and I put aside 10 cents, that's 10 cents put away that I didn't have put away before, versus spending the whole dollar and then saying, okay, now what? So just to learn where the little disciplinary tips are as we grow. And we can teach our children by our activity. We don't always have to teach them by what we say and say, do as I say, not as I do. And me making some huge shifts in my activity level and tracking my budget and being on top of things has helped us to really make a shift. For example, to give you something tangible, I had to plan my job. I got notice, which somebody doesn't get notice all the time. I knew it was going to be ending in April of this past year. So I was able to plan ahead of time for them spending 5 weeks with me, right? Because now I can handle a budget. So plan airline tickets, how we're going to spend our food money, where we're going to be going for activities, planning. And it teaches us that too.
Yeah, I like that when you were saying, you were just the part of the abuse on yourself was that you just were spending, and they obviously you weren't going buying designer items. You've got four babies and a mortgage. You're paying for food, but you're also doing the discretionary spend, like you said. Your nails, they're important. They're important, but when you don't have it, those
Yeah.
discretionary things have to go. And
Yeah.
I think that's part of the discipline, isn't it? Because that's the stuff that hurts. Because we go, oh, that's part of who I am and I deserve it and I work really hard, and we justify all these
Hmm.
things to ourselves. Or, I've had this big month, or I don't feel well and I want this thing, these impulsive spends. But when you see where that hole that they're digging you, that, ended up burying you in bankruptcy twice, you've if you've got that goal, it's like, what, if I don't get my nails done for 6 months and it's $30 a go or whatever, that's a few $100s that I can put to something else. It's, I think, having that end goal in mind of whether it's getting out of debt or saving for the deposit or wanting to have the baby. Like you said, now you can spend and go, right, I've got 5 weeks with my kids. How cool that we can do all these
Yeah.
things together, which is a beautiful goal. And look, if it meant you didn't have to get your nails done for 6 months, what's the issue? Because, suddenly you got
Yeah.
Disneyland ahead or whatever that is. So I think sometimes, yeah, that discipline, we sort of think, oh, it's too hard, but what's the end goal? And if that's the big, bright, shiny object at the end, that makes it so much easier to work towards, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Having a plan towards a shiny object definitely is easier than scrummaging through and figuring out, oh, my nails look great, but we're not going to be able to do anything next week when it comes to hanging out or going to something specific that comes up for you guys. And forget any emergency. If you have an emergency, you're done. My emergencies literally took me out every time one came up. So, and I'm
And
talking
there will
about
always
emergencies
be,
of
yeah,
car tire.
yeah,
I'm not talking about emergency of children in hospital. I'm talking about little
yeah, the washing
things
machine
in
doesn't
the
work
grand
or,
scheme.
yeah,
Yeah. So changing the
yeah.
plan and learning to be disciplined definitely changed the whole mindscape landscape of the trajectory of my life.
So I know you said a friend recommended the financial coach to you. Was it a big deal for you to go, look, this is an investment I know I have to make to turn things around? Was it hard for you to go, look, I've got a background in finance. I should, I know what I'm doing. I can do this. Or was it like, you know what? Obviously I need the help and I want to invest in this coach. What was your thought process when you took on the coach?
Obviously, I needed the help. No, I did not want to invest in the help. I wasn't using the free tools, so I needed to invest in the help. I'm I have a finance background, yes, but I wasn't using the free tools. There are free budgets everywhere, right? There's Excel spreadsheets, there's all kinds of things. But if you're not implementing them and holding yourself accountable, they don't work. So I had to invest in someone saying, I'm calling you every week, or you're calling me every week. We have a group call that you need to get on as well. That's going to have other people that are going through the same things you're going through, right? And no shame. Tell me all of the things that you thought were shameful for you so we can put those away, because that's not what we're here for now. I needed that. I needed someone to hold my hand through this process because I wasn't doing it. I wasn't doing it alone. And I definitely wasn't doing it in my previous relationship. I just was not having any conversations about it. I wasn't doing any of the lists. I would make a budget one week, not make one next week. It was a chaotic cycle.
I think you've hit on the head there, that it's that accountability, isn't it? So if you've got someone who you trust and you know that they're financial and have their act together, that's a really cool thing if you've got someone to rely on. But if you don't have that, paying for that accountability. I mean, we do it with personal trainers, don't we? We go to the gym. Like you said, coaches need coaches. I've been in business for
Yeah.
20 plus years. I still get coached, because there's always something to learn. I don't think you ever get to the place where you're the smartest person in your room. And if you are, you're probably in the wrong room. So, like you said, just getting
Yeah.
that
You've
person to,
outgrown that room.
yeah, to
Definitely.
be accountable to is a really, really big
Yeah.
idea. So, no,
And
thank
it
you.
wasn't a point the finger type accountability. It wasn't a point the finger type accountability. When I would have my meetings, um, I could actually say it's Justin Bonomo. He wasn't there saying, "Okay, Darlene, you really went over on this line item this week. We got to take a look at that for next week." He would say, "Here's an area for opportunity." Right? And
Beautiful
I'd
phrasing.
never
Yeah.
forget that. Here's an area of opportunity. We needed to have spent $300 on this line item this week, but you're at 450. So next month, lady, let's try to get down to 300. Let's get closer to 350. And I understand, because I needed the accountability to the point where there was a column on my budget that says comments. But because I didn't have the discipline before, I had to use that comments column to type in what I spent the money on. Because before you know it, it could have been ice cream with the children, ice cream for me. Well, I had, like you said, I had a great day. I'm going out to dinner. And that miscellaneous line item that was my line item, it will pile up. So when I started to write it down and see, okay, you're like, come on, D. You didn't really need those 2 pints of ice cream this week. Your hips didn't need it and your pocket obviously couldn't support it. So accountability is huge.
So when you start this process, how confronting was that when you sat down for that first time to look at where you're at and where you wanted to go? What did that feel like?
Thank goodness for him because there were
Did you
tears.
cry? You
I
did.
cried. It was,
Yep.
yeah, it was awful. It wasn't my best conversation by far. I'm a professional woman. I want to be on top. I want to be able to put my best foot forward. But in this area, I was sucking. I mean, I was sucking wind. So he had to like take the range and be like, okay, lay it all out for me because we're gonna put, like I said, we're gonna put that aside and we're gonna start from a fresh, clean slate. But laying it out meant telling him I ordered these $200 bags for my birthday. I was gonna be 40. I thought I needed these bags. I don't use those bags.
When did
The
they end
rest
up in the charity bin?
been telling him I have this amount coming out of my account every week for investment for the children. I have $200 in my savings account after I've been working 12, 15 years. It meant being completely vulnerable to someone that I had known for like 20 minutes. But because of how him as a professional, which I'm sure you too, approach this topic, I was able to do that in a safe space and then start to heal from there. Because there's some healing that comes. Whew.
So when you're talking about you've got the vulnerability, you've got the shame, probably some embarrassment about where you'd ended up at that stage, and then you're going on this journey, tears and all, was it then easy or was it then still fall off the wagon? How did the journey play out? Was there still days where you're like, you know what, I do need that pint of ice cream, and that sort of stuff? How did
Yeah.
the journey unfold? How long did it take? What was involved in that?
Well, the journey to the financial freedom that I'm attempting to build is ongoing. So I'm a recovering terrible with money person. There has to be like
I
some
love that.
line, it has to be a specific word or something. But it was because money is forever, right? We're gonna need it always. So I'm still recovering from the state that I had gotten myself in. And how do I continue to recover? I continue to track my budget,
You're a recovering
even though
financial
I'm
abuser.
in debt. Yes, I'm a recovering financial abuser. And
of,
this
of
as a
self.
t-shirt. I'm gonna
Yeah.
need a t-shirt. And I continue to have to do that to hold myself accountable because it's easy to overspend when you have the money in the bank. And
And
my
suddenly
financial
these little
coach would
pots are
always say,
growing that he's saying,
yeah,
you need savings for this, savings for that. And you're like, oh, look, there's a few $100 there.
yeah. And my financial coach is saying we spend from our budget, not from our bank account. And he'd have to remind me of that every session. He's like, Darlene, we spend from our budget, not from our bank account. And I'm like, oh, okay. So
So that just
there's
didn't
not
sink
that
in
extra.
day one.
Yeah, that didn't, no, that's not extra. But it's a continuous process. So I'm still, like I said, I'm still tracking a budget. I'm still managing line items, which line items can be something like the car insurance, the life insurance. There's certain things that I need to maintain, medical for the children. Those types of things are line items on my budget. What's not on my budget is my nails for the month. That's in my miscellaneous, that teeny line item that I give myself. But if it doesn't fit in there, then it can't get done this month. And that's part of the discipline now.
I love that analogy that, you're the recovering addict. You're always going to be the addict, and you've always got to stay on
Oh, yeah.
track because, the bright shiny things or the opportunities or those situations that pop up always will distract us. So it's a beautiful
Yeah.
example actually of, yeah, it's a constant journey. You don't ever win. There's no that's it, I've arrived. Yay, the
No.
fireworks can go off now. So yeah,
And
it's
there are a couple of
ongoing.
financial people that I've followed in the past that have this conversation that say they have arrived. Their financial coaches are telling them, you've sold 3 million copies of your book and you've done, these things, and you do have enough money to show up to Target and have an entire shopping spree. But because of the discipline and the accountability that they built into getting away from the trauma, they're like this still. And that's therapy in itself that, that needs to be gone through. It's like, why couldn't I have a signature orange wall in my house, which you can't see, but it's right in front of me. I sit for inspiration from this side because that's part of what was built into my recovery. Every time I look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not in any debt anymore. But this house is, a testimony of that. So every time I go to spend something, there's still that trigger that says, okay, is this a need or is this a want? Because your hips can't handle this ice cream. So you can
But
have
your
an
taste
Oreo.
buds can. I love it. I used to have one client who, when I first met them, wasn't great, and they'd end up ringing me going, "Oh, this brand I love, Oriton's got a sale on. I want to buy a tassel for my handbag." And I'm like, "How much have you still got on that personal loan you want to get rid of? Like, you don't need a tassel, seriously." As a reward, when you get rid of that personal loan, I will allow you to buy the
Have
tassel.
all the
Like,
tassels.
no. Yeah, have the tassel for your handbag. So, yeah, it's those rewards, and the rewards, like you said, it can be painting your wall a certain color. It doesn't have to be a financial or a physical thing. It can be,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, something inspirational. So
For
minimal
sure.
cost, but great impact.
Something symbolic. Yeah. Yes. Lasting.
Yeah, I'm
I
an
do a lot more
experience as well.
lasting things
Yeah,
now with my.
doing stuff instead of buying stuff. That's me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I'm so pleased that you've shared your story with us because even though financial abuse among partners isn't spoken of a lot, I think there's so much shame when we've done it to ourselves and we know that, it's my own lack of responsibility or just going down the rabbit hole of life and not paying attention and being that ostrich with the head in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
It's it doesn't go away, and to be brave enough to say I need help, that's pretty cool. So thank you for sharing that with us, Darlene. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I used to think of myself as a brave person. And now I know that I'm a brave person because some of the things that I've gone through, and we all are. I think the less abuse that we put on ourselves for the things that we coulda, woulda, shoulda did is the stronger that we can be. And I'm learning
Yeah.
that through new relationships. I'm learning that through new things that I do. That, yeah, past mistakes don't make my potential.
Oh, they just add to our beautiful tapestry of who we become, don't they? I heard that expression once that we should all over ourselves. And it's just stuck in my head that should do this, should make that photo, should do the, in the end, you're like, oh, stop shooting all over myself. It's such a great thing
That's the
to
truth.
remember. Yeah. And we get a choice, isn't it?
We do. And I wasn't using my choices very well. I made a lot of poor choices. I made those choices led me to who I am now, but when we're really taking stock, they were poor choices, you know? And to look back on them without guilt or shame is where the growth is. Because I
Absolutely.
could say, "Oh, this choice and woe is me." But no, they were choices that I made. Yeah, at the time they were poor, but look at who I'm becoming. look at where we
Yeah.
are now.
I think that's it, isn't it? If we're not getting the lesson from it, they're just constantly poor choices. But if now we can go, I've actually learned and grown from that experience, don't have to make those choices again. And if you're smart enough to learn from someone else's poor choices, you're even better off.
Exactly, which is
Don't go
why
through them
haters be
yourself.
damned exists. It's exactly why haters be damned exists. Because
Well,
women can learn from my poor choices. You can definitely learn from the poor choices I made. I'm very transparent when I talk to the women that I work with, and they get to know that, hey, you're going to make big mistakes. You're going to make little mistakes, but they're yours to make, and you're fine. Hold space for them. That's what I say. I just hold space
absolutely.
for them and share with them a way out, a way to get rest, a way to get through. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
Well, I will make sure that in the show notes there's plenty of ways to get in touch with you, Darlene, for all those who want to join the Haters Be Damned tribe. So thank you again so much for sharing. Really appreciate it.
You are so welcome.